Well, welcome to Magic Battles Discussions. Today, we're going to take a look at counterfeit magic cards. So before you, we have 8 magic cards face down. So look at those magic cards. Can you tell the difference? Now let's flip them all over. The same 8 magic cards in the same order. Take a look. Can you pick out the fakes? Now some of you are probably wondering and thinking to yourselves, oh, they're the expensive cards. Well, you're right. It's those 3 expensive cards, the Vampiric Tutor, Time Twister, and the Sylvan Library. The other 5 are indeed real. So you look at this, those are the 3 fakes. So there's a real. But what about if we put cards side by side? Here we have 4 magic cards. We have 2 Polluted Deltas, 2 Sensei's Divining Tops. Can you tell the real from the fake? Well, the Polluted Delta on the right is real, and the Sensei's Divining Top on the left is real. The ones on the outside are fake. Not so easy, is it? So let's compare 2 flooded strands. These flooded strands, the one on the left is the real card, the one on the right is fake. Put them across from each other as if you're playing a game of Magic. Can you tell? How we flip them around? Still not easy, is it? So these are pretty passable Magic cards. Okay, so here's a video view of some of these counterfeit cards. Force of Will, we have Polluted Delta, Cruel Tutor. Polluted Delta has a sleeve on it. There's a Force of Will with a sleeve. They look spot on, pretty legit, right? And just looking at them from a distance, they look very legit. A few other cards we'll look at. Mystical Tutor. We have an Underground Sea from Unlimited. And you can see they look pretty legit. And here's a bunch of cards. Some Unlimited Dual Lands, Beta Dual Lands, and a bunch of other cards. You know, they feel like real cards. This Time Twister looks really real, especially when they're in a sleeve. Here's a Badlands. Feels really nice and a perfect fit. So if we compare them to real Magic cards, they look and feel about the same. They feel very much like real cards. If we mix them together and shuffle them up, you'd have a hard time picking out the real from the fake. But we're going to look at a few fine details that will show you some differences. The thickness is different. We'll take a look at that in a little more detail. So comparing the thickness, we have 10 cards side by side. Counterfeits are on the left, real cards are on the right. The color's different, but even the thickness is different. Ironically, the weight isn't that much different. You're talking about, 5/100ths of a gram, so not much of a difference. You're not going to feel a difference in weight. Let's compare 2 cards side by side. You can see the white side on the white cardstock fake card. The real card looks a little darker. So tilting it around, you should be able to feel and see there are some subtle differences. And then the sheen is a little different too. So you can see that reflection from the Void Snare relative to the Mystical Tutor. So that sheen is another giveaway. It's more reflective relative to a real Magic card. The real Magic cards are much more reflective. So again, these are white border Magic cards. Now there are blue and black core cards that exist out there, and those cards are a little bit more expensive and their quality is a little better, but all of these counterfeits seem to have their own intricacies that make them different and unique. They don't all pass the same tests. They don't all fail the same tests. So it's important to look at these different cards. So don't try the bend test with these cards. These particular white core cards do not pass. But even with a real Magic card, do you really want to bend your $50 dual land or your $300 dual land or your $1,000 dual land? I don't think so. So there are much better tests that we can use to test our Magic cards and verify their authenticity. So we want to see the different sheens that come from these cards. So we're going to take a look at the light test after this, but first look at that sheen, how the Jace's Phantasm reflects a lot more light versus the Force of Will on the surface doesn't reflect as much light. They don't feel too different, but in bright light, they will reflect the light quite a bit differently. So we're going to do a light test. So I just use my cell phone, projecting the light from the flash. And what you want to see is trying to read the word Deckmaster in the back of the card. See that word right there? So we're just going to try and see if we can see that word through it. There it shows up. You can see the color from it. You can actually read individual letters, and it's just barely visible. But on these particular counterfeits, they've let way too much light come through, way too much. You can clearly see the word Deckmaster there. You can see through the top of the card. It's just way too much light passing through. You can even see the little color symbols. Flip it over and you can see all the artwork. You shouldn't be able to do that. So here's what a real card looks like when the light shines through it. You can see a little bit through it, but you shouldn't be seeing, perfect picture through that card. So here's some still photos I took of these magic cards. And you can see just how clear the real cards are on the left, the fake cards are on the right. And you can see in those fake cards just how clear that word Deckmaster comes out. Now you can still see it in the real cards, but side by side, it's pretty obvious which ones are fake and which ones are real. And all of your real cards are going to behave pretty much this way. It doesn't matter how old or how new the cards are, they pretty much behave the same way. So here we have the Force of Will again, looking at the reflection. You notice, there was a difference, but these are bare cards, right? So here's our Jace's Phantasm again. Bare cards reflects quite a bit more light. But the reality is how often are we playing cards this way? We often put them in sleeves, right? So in a sleeve, that glossiness doesn't really matter. You look at the card and it reflects the light off the plastic of the sleeve, not off the sheen of the card. So using that as a reliable method really isn't there. Most people aren't going to be super happy for you to take the card out of a perfect fit or out of a sleeve necessarily. If you're really concerned, you can do that, but there's no need to. We're going to take a look at some techniques here that will allow you to look at counterfeit cards. So with all the tests out there, one of the ones you really want to pay attention to is if you look at these cards, okay, how often do you come across a mint Bayou from Unlimited? Pretty rare, right? I mean, flip it over, look it around, there is no damage, no use whatsoever. Or even a Beta Tropical Island, you don't come across that. Come on. And if you do, it's sealed up in a case that somebody's had in their closet for 2 decades, right? So it's, if cards are too good to be true, it's because they're just too good to be true. So we're going to use a cell phone here to, instead of doing the light test, we're going to get a macro lens that fits over the lens of the phone, uses a magnet and attaches, and get them for, I don't know, $2 or $3 through like eBay or even Amazon. And they attach to the camera, and they often come with a holder and a little lanyard, and they will even attach to like a fisheye or a telephoto lens to help zoom on your phone. But we want to use the macro lens because what we're going to do is look at close up on the card, because there's a really easy way to tell these counterfeits, even the really good counterfeits, the ones that have the blue or the black core that have come out more recently. So we don't need a microscope or a loupe. Just take your phone, and what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in onto the image. So we can zoom in just with a regular zoom using the macro lens through a sleeve. You don't have to take it out of the sleeve or anything, so you can get really close, see the pixels. But if you use a digital zoom on the phone, we just need to focus on an area. So I've got a 4x digital zoom on my phone. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the card really close up now. And what you'll be able to do is see very up close. See how crisp that is? You can see how the font really isn't right. Okay, it kind of blends in with the background. You don't see those nice pixeled edges that you would see in a real card. Here's the set symbol for alliances. You can see it's kind of not looking correct. So here's some real cards. Again, these are in a binder even. You don't have to pull them out. But you see how crisp those lines are? Do you see this little rosette matrix that's there? That is indicative of a real card. And it just immediately just pops up, right? No problem whatsoever telling this is a real card and the fake is a fake card. So again, if you look at the Force of Will over here, right? Doesn't have that. Here we have some cards from alliances. So on the left is a real card, an Arcane Denial. On the right is the Force of Will, that's a counterfeit. And if you look just at the text is a little off. It's a little more bold in the actual rules text for the Force of Will. And the word interrupt is a little bit different. It's more crisp on the actual Arcane Denial or real card. Then if we look in closely at the set symbol, there are some subtle differences, but where the real differences lies when we zoom in here in the back of the card, looking at the same area of the M in the word magic, you can see that rosette pattern on the left, but not on the right. It's very pixelated and not very crisp and clear. If we look at a polluted delta here, this polluted delta on the left is real. You can see around the tap symbol how crisp the black and the white are on the arrow versus the fake on the right. But then also look at that brown region that is surrounding the tap symbol. It's much more clear, and you can see that rosette pattern super clearly relative to the fake polluted delta. And then you can see the words are, the letters rather, are much more crisp and refined on the real card versus the fake card. Now, if we take a look at, these are some cards from Unlimited. The one on the left is real, the one on the right is fake. And so you can see once again that nice rosette pattern. Now this is something that I just want to point out, that not all sets are the same. So if you look at the SU and the word summon, you see that it's like a checkered pattern in this Unlimited card. It's not straight white, it's not black, but it's actually a checkered pattern. Now that's a real card. Now compare that to the counterfeit on the right. You can see how that's all blended together. Zoomed out, it's hard to tell the difference for these types of cards. Really, really hard. Okay, so to come to a more modern set now, we're going to look at these two artifacts. They are both Sensei's Divining Top. One is real, one is fake. The one on the left is real, the one on the right is fake. Now you'll see the word ART from artifact is crisp and clear lines on the left, whereas on the right it's smudged on the edges, and then you can see the rosette pattern on the left. You see that in the white, you see that in the colors of the card, and again, pretty easy to tell. So what I want to do now is just examine some other places of cards that are worth checking if you're going to use a macro lens. The set symbol, very easy place for you to check, and the reason being is you can see not only the crispness of the text, but you should also be able to see the nice rosette patterns that surround that text that are found in the text box and also in the picture box. You should also see it on the borders of the cards here. Some other things to point out, many of these fake cards actually at a distance look really real. So if you look at the Sylvan Library from Legends and compare it to another card from Legends, here's a creature. The one on the left is the real card. You can see that rosette pattern very clearly. The letters again in white at the top have that checkered pattern, whereas on the right you can see that it's just clearly just a white font that's there. But one thing I want to point your attention to is just how, zoomed in, okay, major differences. But when you zoom out and you pull those differences away, they got everything right. They have that bend at the top of the text box is spot on. I mean, even the difference in green shadow next to it. So when you look at this card from a distance, like arm's length sitting on the table, you just wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And also the color spot on. For those of you who don't know, the Sylvan Library um, from this particular legend set is actually slightly different green color than other Sylvan Library cards. And this is true for a lot of Legends cards. Those older sets just didn't print out the same. Now, another place you can look is comparing the artist inscription on these cards, and you can also look at the copyright dates. And you can see that they're just not the same on the fake card. So here we have a fake card on the right, and then the real card on the left. And you can see just how different those two components of those cards are. So it's just one more point to kind of look at. We've looked at the light test. We've looked at being able to zoom in on a card. Now there are some other very quick tests we can do if you have access to the right tools. And this is the UV test. We're going to use UV light around 405 nanometers. And we're just going to illuminate the cards with it. Now this requires you to be in the dark to see it really well. So it's not really practical to do. But if you ever have like a large group of cards that you're trying to buy or trade from somebody and you're concerned about anything, just get a black light, get in a dark room and shine it over the cards, and the ones that are fake will immediately pop out. Some cases they don't fluoresce at all. In this case, they actually fluoresce too well. And so if you actually laid these cards out, as you can see, the fake card is on the left or in the middle at the top, or on the left or on the bottom. You can see how much more fluorescent this particular card is. So this is just one more test to help you identify which cards are fake and which ones are real. Now, we've looked at several points of these magic cards. We can look at the light test. We can look, zoom in. Those are probably the two simplest things you can do, and they're super reliable and super easy. I would recommend just getting a macro lens and just look with your phone. You can take a picture, you can document it much more easily, and it's a lot easier to use in the jeweler's loupe, a lot easier. So that's my recommendation. Good luck finding those out there. Stay safe. Thanks.